Everybody, thanks for watching and welcome to Greek Mythology Volume 2. I want to thank you guys for taking the time to purchase and support. And one of the reasons why this series is so important is because when you get into Greek mythology, when you start studying it with the knowledge of ancient Egyptian mythology, it shows you how much Greek mythology copied from ancient Kemet. It shows you exactly what the ancient Greeks admit themselves, that one, they was going into ancient Kemet, they were studying and learning with the Egyptians. And when you pay attention to Greek mythology, you can see that they was taking that information and bringing it back to ancient Greece and basically setting up systems with this information, with this knowledge. And it was sort of esoteric when you pay attention, because you have with ancient Egyptian mythology the hidden meanings behind the gods, as I have shown you through the videos about how we can look at certain gods and deities and ascribe them to parts of the body, or to celestial events, or to nature itself. And the Greeks was doing the exact same thing, taking these powers, these principles of reality, nature that exist, and bringing them into Greek culture, creating these stories and mythologies, just like the ancient Egyptians, and putting these stories out there. Now, one of the things is when you go back and you study the ancient world, and one of the reasons why this is really important, this series, is so that you can see that we can go back far. Further we go back, the more we see that so many different civilizations had mythologies. We find so many different civilizations throughout the world, some with remnants, artifacts, or what have you, claiming to be much older than ancient Kemet. The thing is this: there is no two ancient civilizations on this planet that we have discovered that we can find as much information about as ancient Greece and ancient Kemet. And you have to think about this, because one, we know we can go back 3000 BCE with ancient Kemet, Narma, 3000 BCE. I mean, that's long. And it seems as if when you get to about 1000 BCE, you start getting in Greek mythology, the Greek culture. You start hearing about these Greek myths. And we can't find any other culture that we can follow so far back and have so much detail. We're talking about with the, Homer, Odyssey, the Iliad, the whole world of Greek mythology and Greek stories, from, the Orphic Theogonies, as I'm going to talk about, Hesiod, his Theogonies. I mean, this stuff is old. We're talking about 1000 to 700 BCE in this time frame. We can't find nothing else from no other culture or civilization on this planet that dates back so far with so much information. Think about that. So when we get into the whole conversation about, conquering, and about civilizations that was conquered, how information was lost and burned, or what have you, this is one of the reasons. But again, you got to pay attention to the fact that for somehow, the Greek and ancient Egyptians, their whole theology, their whole history, a lot of it survived. Now, the ancient Egyptians, because one, they put it in stone, and the stuff was so beautiful and so important that they couldn't dare destroy it all. They took away what they could take away. They hid what they hid, and we have what we have. But we've been able to piece together large parts of what we have today. Now, in Greek mythology, and what you're going to see in this video, and what you're going to understand by the end of it, is how much we are immersed in the same story over and over again. It's going to make a lot more sense later in a second, but it's amazing. And the main point is you have to really figure out, and this is going to show you clear by the end of this video, who exactly is in power and what exactly they are doing and how crazy it is. There's a lot of stuff people are not seeing and not realizing when you pay attention to Greek mythology We pay attention to the stories that we have been told, the information that's out there, and you start to put it in context with everything else. And then slowly the picture starts to reveal itself and you start to see what's going on. Now, you have many people talking about Sumer, ancient Mesopotamia, and all these other ancient places that people want to proclaim, is older than ancient Kemet. And a lot of places, not saying that, ancient Egypt was the oldest, the first civilization or what have you, because we know that's not true. But it's a reason. It's a reason why. We can talk about all these other ancient civilizations, but it's a reason why they go back to Kemet. Ancient Kemet is the most researched thing in all of history, in all of recorded history. There is nothing that has been researched more than ancient Egypt. Nothing that has been copied more than ancient Egypt. As I've shown you guys, we owe so much of our system, the things we have from, toys, dolls, board games, all the way up to sports, we find back in ancient Kemet. So there has been no other civilization in the history of mankind that we know of that has been copied more than ancient Kemet, that has been mimicked. Look, Freemasonry. Everything that entails comes from ancient Kemet. So much has been stolen. These people that's studying the doctrine of the occult and all these esoteric, books and meanings, this stuff goes back to ancient Kemet. It doesn't come from Sumer and Mesopotamia or, the Mayans, the Olmecs, or what have you. And when you go back and start looking at a lot of these civilizations that people are talking about, the information we can trace back to ancient Kemet, as I have been showing you guys. So it's a reason why they fixated on ancient Kemet. It's a reason why they put that pyramid on the back of the dollar bill. The reason why everything that we see is, we could trace it back there, is because there's something about that civilization. And from my research, to me, it is the last remnants of the civilization of who the ancient Egyptians called the gods, the ones with power. It's the same thing when you get into Greek mythology that they are talking about. So you have this line to where you have this civilization of ancient Egyptians who they say, and the Greeks say, that before these people, somehow in Kemet, before they came, there was this civilization or these gods, these beings that ruled before the dynasties, before Norma, before the people who we know from ancient Kemet that we have been studying over the years, that they talk about before them were the gods. And it's so weird how the Greeks put it, same type of way, that you have this world of the gods before men was created. And it's so many different stories, all with esoteric meanings about how we came about, that you really got to dig into. But again, a lot of people want to talk about these ancient civilizations. It's a reason why. And as you're going to see in this video, when you pay attention, one, it all goes back to ancient Greece. And we know the Greeks stole it from ancient Kemet, so it goes back there. So it's a lot of stuff people are missing and not seeing as it pertains to ancient Greece and ancient Kemet. So now whatever happened to those beings, whatever happened to that generation before the dynasties, has to be responsible for our situation, responsible for the fact that we are no longer in power, and basically must be behind the rise of the European power, because it just fits that all of a sudden you have, this war, and, seemingly the original man, the melanated people of the planet, is somehow, put in this prison, this situation where we are not allowed to progress in any areas as far as, intellectual advancement or any type of advanced civilization. We have been enslaved and oppressed, for a reason. And it just goes back to what I was saying. Think about it. You have the Greeks, you have the Romans talking about the ancient Egyptians, how great and mighty they were, about the Greeks and Romans coming in there to learn and study with the Egyptians. Think about what they was able to do and accomplish. Think about what they could have brought to the people, what they was trying to do. Think about who in their right mind would cause the collapse of such a civilization and a people. So much they did to help, so much information and knowledge that they had. Why would you want to cause the downfall of these people who never raised their hand to no other civilization or group of people? They was fixated on one thing. Knowing who they were, being spiritual people, and figuring out what took place, what happened, how to get it back. They wasn't in a position to where they was trying to go out and conquer the planet, as we see with the Europeans. So why take down that civilization? Everything that we see with the fall of Kemet and the information, the knowledge, just the way it was left, was as if, we can't use it. You got to look at it that way, because that's exactly what it was. So the only way you would cause the downfall of that civilization is if it does not benefit you. If you can't get out of it what you want out of it, but you don't want nobody else to get something out of it either. And that's exactly what happened. By the same token, you can ask the question, you are now in possession of the greatest civilization that you have ever known. You have it. You conquered it. It's yours. Why not keep it? Why not hold on to it? And, basically they kind of sort of did, and they still own it. And, they kind of sort of still use it when you understand that situation. But the reason why the Europeans, of course, couldn't keep it and rule it and be the face of Kemet is, of course, because of the heat. And the fact that other surrounding civilizations knew who the ancient Egyptians was. And just the simple fact of keeping that kingdom and that system going would keep resonating with us Africans. Keep us in the knowledge and understanding that that's us, that's our power, not yours. You just conquered it. So what is it you're trying to hide from us? So it's better that we leave this stuff. Don't tell nobody about it. Don't talk about it. Don't teach the Africans about it. Just, twist it. Make them be unsure of the situation in ancient Egypt, which is what they did. See, they couldn't be there. White men can't be there in that heat, excavating. You heard about the so-called curse of the mummy, what kept happening to those Englishmen when they was down there. They was dying from cancer, strokes, and all kinds of stuff because of the heat. So if you own the Arabs, if you running Islam, that system, you can have the Arabs, go in there, excavate. They can withstand the heat. And since you own that system, since you control Egyptology and these people that's running the country, the artifacts that's found, the information that's found, you can keep under wraps. You can keep the cover up going because you run these people. This is one of the reasons why they let the Arabs in and did not allow us to go back into ancient Egypt to figure out what was there, to uncover it and then have the knowledge, because they knew how important it was. So they secured it for the Arabs and keep it away from us. And that's clear. So it's telling you, I go back to Kemet a lot. I keep telling people, you guys got to follow what I follow. But everything is pointing there for a reason. It's telling you where to go with the study. Everything falls back to these two groups, the Greeks and the ancient Egyptians, and what was going on. The Greeks taking us into the future. And following anything that they doing is like, what's the point? Well, we need to be staying with the ancient Egyptians and what they was trying to figure out in the past. That's the key, which, we get into. But it's definitely important to understand that fact, that they did exactly, what they always do. And when I'm giving you guys the Bible series and talking about in Exodus and Deuteronomy and Leviticus and what have you, in Numbers, the spoils of war, and them basically using that same MO, going into these civilizations, conquering and taking off with the information, what they can use to keep, building their empire. So even when you look it up in the Bible, from Exodus 12:36, and the Lord had given the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they let them have their requests. Thus they plundered the Egyptians. And again, where in the Bible, where in that story do you see especially in Exodus, What do you see in the story of the Israelites and Egyptians where the Israelites are basically taking the Egyptian shit? You don't see that. So again, this is another hint of them talking about themselves, the Greeks. The Greeks are the ones who plundered the Egyptians. There's no proof. There's nothing to show that Israelites plundered ancient Kemet. It says the sons of Israel captured the women of Midian and their little ones, and all their cattle and all their flocks and all their goods they plundered. So, it's just giving you the same MO of what the Greeks have been known to do. Conquer civilizations, steal their stuff, keep moving. And the Israelites, as I talk about in the Bible series, being the Greeks. It's going to make a lot of sense as we go on. All this stuff going to come together. Trust me. This is something that people really need to understand and see and make that connection. Because there's a lot of people who still are not sold on the ancient Greeks being the ones behind all of this. And not really getting that understanding that we're talking about the same people here when we're talking about the Romans. When we're talking about the Germans. When we're talking about any other Europeans. They're Europeans. It doesn't matter. They are in this together, whether you believe it or not. Everything else, it's a song and a dance. It's all politics bullshit. All to keep the veil, cover over our eyes about what's really going on and what these beings are really trying to do on this planet. So now what's known by scholars who study antiquity, who study ancient Kemet and ancient Greece or what have you, what's known by these people that is not put out there mainstream is the fact that, of course, Greek mythology, which we have been taught in school, all the information, everything that's out there is in fact stolen Egyptian mythology and plagiarized Egyptian mythology. Basically, the stories switched up to fit, the ancient Greeks. And this is something that's real easy when you get deep into it and study the two. You can see it clear as day, as I said. But we know from Egyptian mythology, we have the primordial, 8. We have the ancient Egyptian creation story. And everybody's got this creation story. There's a lot in common with all of them. We got the ancient Egyptian creation story. We know about the Adod, the primordial 8, or, the primordial egg. We know about Ptah, the waters of Noon, the dark abyss, or what have you, all that talking about the ancient Egyptian creation story with Atum and how everything came into existence. And it's basically giving you a parable about the powers that's basically, first, which is going to initiate the existence of everything else when you break down the story and understand what it's saying esoterically. We know about that with ancient Kemet. Now, the thing is, you get into Greek mythology and the Greek, creation story and getting into all that information, and it's the same. They're giving you Egyptian mythology, showing you that they basically took the same story. So in Greek mythology, you have the primordial gods. Now it says here, primordial gods. The primordial gods, or protogenoi, which basically means the first beings in existence, the first beings in creation of Greek mythology, were the most basic components of the universe which emerged fully formed at creation. They included earth, air, sea, fresh water, underworld, darkness, night, light, day, procreation, and time. And when you look at these, notice the one down there that is Geb and Nut. That says Uranus. If you understand Greek mythology, we know Uranus being the father of Kronos, and Kronos kills him with that sickle, basically castrates him. Long story. But you see here, they have the list of these primordial gods, and Kronos being one. And it's a whole lot to get into with this story, because you have so many different versions of the story, going from Greek mythology, going from orpheism, and the whole thing with the Diogenes of Hesiod, or Hesiod, however you want to pronounce his name. So many different stories in Greek mythology. Same thing in ancient Egyptian mythology. They were told different depending on what town or what part of the country you was in. But clearly we can see with this, the primordial gods, we got the primordial gods of ancient Kemet, and that the two basically are similar. So now I talked about generational indoctrination. Basically, if you want to get the future, and that's something you got to think about, because it's deep when you start to really pay attention. We're talking about teaching kids now so that later the future generation, when they're older, are doing exactly what we want. So you have to think about the type of dedication, as I always say. These people spending the time, the years, teaching these kids so that when they grow up, the information that they have is just normal, regular life. They're going to teach their kids, so on and so forth. So understanding generational indoctrination is understanding the fact that if we just teach the kids, guess what? Everything else is going to take care of itself, because they're going to grow up and teach their kids, and so on and so forth. And then we just got to teach the kids. We don't have to worry about it later on, because it's going to be the norm. And it's exactly what's happening in our society, today. And the ancient Greeks, you go back to that time, them basically going into ancient Kemet and seeing how the system was run and understanding that. When you really pay attention, how do you basically run the system? And it's exactly how I just said. Everything that we know, we are taught at a young age. And as we grow older and we see adults doing exactly what we was taught, it's normal. Anybody that goes against that normal system, the normal things that we do, is weird, and it will stand out like a sore thumb. So this is how you establish civilizations of people to be under your control, under your system. You start with generational indoctrination, teaching the kids and getting the kids to understand this information, pass it down, so on and so forth. And they looked at the ancient Egyptian civilization and said, okay, well, these people are basically going and following because they was taught to do so. And they copied that. And it's just that simple. They looked at the situation and said, okay, well, we're going to come up with the same type of system. And we're going to create these stories and mythologies to keep our people in line, to get them to follow what we want them to follow. So all you have to basically do now is come up with the right story, the right structure, the right teachings to teach these people, to get them in line with whatever your agenda is. And this is exactly what they did. And we're talking about something that's ancient, that's here today, thus telling you exactly, again, who's in power, as you're going to see. So before TV and everything like that, how do you spread this information? Because as I said, we're talking about teaching people, start from kids or what have you, or if you just wanted new information to give to these adults or teenagers that fit into the system or the body of teaching that they already know. And what they would do was they would go from town to town and they would basically tell these stories. Now, if you've seen Thor Ragnarok, just to give you quick examples, Thor Ragnarok, remember the scene in the beginning when Loki is basically having the play and he's basically lying, trying to basically explain the whole situation with the Tesseract. And he is really disguised as Odin, sitting there listening to the story. But the story's a lie. But you notice people gathered around and it's a stage scene and people just listening to the story. And this is how they was telling their history and telling stories or passing information. Same thing if you played the game Assassin's Creed. Remember in Assassin's Creed, you're walking around through the village. It would be a guy out there preaching or talking to the crowd or telling a story. You have people gather around in large groups listening to the story. So, they would basically hear the story, go home, tell their family, what have you. They would listen to the story, go and repeat it. And that's how information spread, how the story spread, what have you. So in ancient Greece, they did the same thing. So only difference was they would sometimes tell the stories in poems or songs to attract more people. A lot of people was entertained by the poems or the music. And it was easier to spread the information that way and get more people to gather around. And people will want to hear the story over and over again because they will want to learn it and know it so they can go teach it because it was a poem or a song. It was something cool to know, even so far back then. Now, they called these people, they called their whole situation a rhapsode. And a rhapsode is basically, I'm just going to read here, etymology and usage. Now it says here, the term rhapsode is derived from rhapsodian, meaning to sew songs together. This word illustrates how the oral epic poem or rhapsode would build a repertoire or diverse myths, tales, and jokes to include in the content of the epic poem. Thus, it was possible through experience and improvisatory skills for him to shift the content of the epos, which epos is basically like a long poem, according to the preferred taste of a specific location's audience. Now, what does that sound like to you? Rhapsode. When you really pay attention to the word. Now, we all heard of rhapsody music. Now, rhapsody music, when you go and look at it, they'll tell you straight up that rhapsody music comes from rhapsode. And we know we have rap. And a lot of people are not going to put that together, but I'm telling you, when I keep saying that this stuff is not ours, that it was given to us, and we're not understanding what it is. And rap, it's poems. We tell stories. It's funny stuff in rap. This stuff they've been doing a long time. Plain and simple. And they understand that music is an influencer. If they understood that when they wrote the Bible, when they wrote those hymns and songs, the whole story of Satan himself, of course they knew that when they gave us music, and understanding how powerful and influential it would be, for us to have this music and put it out. We were striving for an identity, something to hold on to, and they gave us that with rap, with music. We already was putting it out. We already started. It was a matter of time before they used our music or our talents against us. Once gangsta rap, and I have videos, of course, when I get into all this, once all this stuff started coming out, it was clear as day to them what they was doing. Our problem is, again, when we see new stuff, because we just got here. I don't know how old you are, but you ain't been here long. And you thinking within the terms or time frame of this administration or system that anything ancient wouldn't fit within that time, or the people wouldn't know about anything before that time. You get what I'm saying? This is generational indoctrination. See, if you understand the past and past knowledge, you can introduce that knowledge into a new generation and have them completely believe that it's new. I have no clue that it's ancient, it's old. That's the thing. When we hear old or ancient, we don't want nothing to do with it. It's boring. It can't be, upbeat. It has to be primitive. It can't be, what's popping. And there it is. So we can't fathom that this is something that is ancient and old that was used to spread information that basically was going to be involved in influencing people one way or another. And this is exactly what hip hop has done. Influenced us to destroy ourselves. And they have been very good and efficient at it. And this is exactly what we've been doing. But a rhapsode, this is what it was called. This is what they was using back then to basically spread Greek mythology, to spread the stories of Zeus and Kronos and everything like that. And they would have plays, and this is something that was big. We have in this time today our movies and our internet and what have you. Back then, this is what they had. And it was fun to go to these rhapsodes and to these plays and shows to see the information of the time and spread it. And back then, during that time, everything was, surrounded with just people trying to learn, and anything that was information was a big deal. Information was worth more than money for a long time. If you had new information or something new about math or what have you, people would rather, pay money for the books, than anything else. They would rather have the information. The knowledge was power. And if you knew how to implement it in the right ways and use it in the right ways, then you could do big things, so information was everything. And them spreading that information and it being in a form that would be catchy to the people in the form of a poem or a song, it stuck, so on and so forth. People remember that stuff. And, it's the same exact thing that we basically seeing today. Now, what's really important about all this is that they kept, when they's copying and plagiarizing ancient Kemet, back then, they kept what, it took me a long time to really figure out, in ancient Egyptian teachings and mythologies about the wheel of the soul, about understanding that the Egyptians was trying to tell us about this trap being trapped in flesh. And it's the same thing that the ancient Greeks talked about. And it's one of the things, as I said before, to really study ancient Greece and ancient Kemet. And ancient Kemet is so, it's so esoteric. There's so much hidden, and you can't really, of course, trust the Greek narrative of it and what the Greeks talking about. You can only really piece together parts from the people who told the truth, the people who didn't, hide the fact that, they was black, the ones who told, hey, these people were great people, they were black, what have you. What the black scholars who we know of, like, Dr. Ben and Ivan von Sertova, people like John Henry Clark and Anta Diop, and even, people like Maria Gambudis, it's a white woman, R.A. Swallow the Lubics, people who really went in and really told the truth. And you have to piece together. It's tough to put it all together. It took me a minute using the Bible, of course, to finally put it all together. But if you went back to ancient Greek mythology, bam, it's right there. And it's tough. It's tough to get into this stuff. I mean, when you start to read it, it's so many different stories. You don't know which one to go by. It just sounds like a bunch of comic book stuff. And it's like, okay, leave it alone. But when you start matching it up, and this is how you know what it is and what to really follow. But the important part is that they kept that part of the story. And it's in their mythology. And it's one of the biggest clues as to what's going on. So you have, Orpheism. You have the whole Orphic mythology. And it says here, the Orphic theogonies are genealogical works similar to the Theogony of Hesiod. But the details are different, of course. They are really different. The Theogonies are symbolically similar to Near Eastern models. The main story has it that Dionysus, in his carnation as Zagreus, is the son of Zeus and Persephone. Zeus gives his inheritance of the throne to the child, as Zeus is to leave due to Hera's anger over a child being born by another mother. The Titans are enraged over the proclamation of attendance and, at Hera's instigation, decide to murder the child. Dionysus is then tricked with a mirror and children's toy by the Titans, who murder and consume him, eating babies. Athena saves the heart and tells Zeus of the crime, who in turn hurls a thunderbolt on the Titans. The resultant suit from which sinful mankind is born contains the bodies of the Titans and Dionysus. The soul of men, the Dionysus part, is therefore divine, but the body, the Titan part, holds the soul in bondage. Thus, it was declared that the soul returned to a host 10 times bound to the will of rebirth. Let that sink in for a second. So now, Orpheism. It's basically where we get Gnosticism. Plain and simple, talk about the same things. Talking about flesh being evil. We know the whole Gnostic faith, talked about before. Talk about the same thing. Being trapped in flesh. Flesh being evil. Same stuff. It's not a coincidence they found the Nag Hammadi manuscripts where they found them. And again, the Dead Sea Scrolls, found a couple years later, being what they are, again, them putting together these stories, putting them out there for the time, to indoctrinate the people of the time in certain areas. That's what that stuff was about. You got a small town, you want to get this, 100 people or 52 people under this doctrine, you want it to fit what your agenda is. So this stuff pops up a lot, and we find it. But the Gnostic faith, a lot of people want to give it the credit for being the originator of that kind of thinking, of flesh being evil. But it's definitely not. And we can see that you had it back in ancient Greece, and everything else is found there. I mean, it's all there, everything. The whole primordial gods, the Agdol, the cosmic egg is even here. So it's saying here, Orphic poetry. This is 532 BC. Made Nyx The first principal, Night, and her offspring were many. Also, in the Orphic tradition, Phanes, a mystic Orphic deity of light and procreation, sometimes identified with the elder Eros, is the original ruler of the universe, who hatched from the cosmic egg. And there's many depictions of Phanes and the cosmic egg, and you'll see a serpent. A lot of this stuff we talked about before. This stuff is something, we get into this in a little bit more, where we can't ignore this whole serpent talk and dragon talk is because it's everywhere, as I said. You're going to find this stuff in a lot of different places. Now, there's many other civilizations we could look to find stories about, primordial gods, cosmic eggs, and almost all of the ancient civilizations that we know of that we really don't have so much information from. You'll be surprised how many civilizations have creation stories about the egg, and it's amazing. So in China, you have the story of Pangu, and it says here in the beginning there was an enormous egg containing chaos. Sounds familiar? Finally, the egg burst open, and out leaps the giant dragon Pangu. Now, it's different stories when you read this, just like in all the other mythologies. So in this story, you have sometimes it says when Pangu burst out of the egg, sometimes it's the dragon, sometimes it's the man. And when he burst out of the egg, he created yin and yang. He basically separated yin and yang. And you look at the depiction of the egg being upper and lower. In some depictions, it'll say that he created earth, which will be on the bottom, and the sky, which will be on the top, by breaking out of the egg. So it says he created rivers with his fingers and strapped the earth down to create flat land. He gathered raw light and tossed them into the sky to become stars. The half-goddess Nuwa was born after Pangu died from part of the mixture of yin and yang that he had separated. She decided to create humans to have some other beings to talk to and share ideas with, but mostly just to love. She made hundreds and hundreds of mud humans, but soon realized that it would take centuries for her to make enough people. So, as the sun dried each drop, it became a new man or woman. Some say that these humans were the less intelligent ones. Those formed by Nua's own hand became great leaders. She told them to go and populate the earth. Go be fruitful and multiply, go populate. Same type of stories. We find this stuff throughout the ancient world, even with the Dogon. And again, stories are different depending on what you read. Amma and the egg that contains the universe. The early story of the universe has to do with a struggle between Amma, the creator, and Ogo, one of the creations. Sounds familiar? In the beginning, Amma alone was in the shape of an egg. The 4 collarbones were fused, dividing the egg into air, earth, fire, and water, establishing also the 4 cardinal directions. Within the cosmic egg was the material and the structure of the universe, and the 266 signs that embrace the essence of all things. The first creation of the world by Amma was, however, a failure. The second creation began when Amma planted a seed within herself, a seed that resulted in the shape of man. But in the process of its gestation, there was a flaw, meaning that the universe would now have within it the possibility for incompleteness. Now the egg became 2 placentas, each containing a set of twins, male and female. Think about what I'm saying, everything we've been talking about. After 60 years, one of the males, Ogo, broke out of the placenta and attempted to create his own universe, in opposition to that being created by Amma. But he wasn't able to say the words that would bring such a universe into being. He then descended as Amma transformed into the earth, the fragment of placenta that went with Ogo unto the void. Ogo interfered with the creative potential of the earth by having incestuous relations with it. His counterpart, Nomo, a participant in the revolt, was then killed by Amma. The parts of his body cast in all directions, bringing a sense of order to the world. When 5 days later Amma brought the pieces of Namo's body together, restoring him to life. Namo became ruler of the universe. He created 4 spirits, the ancestors of the Dogon people. Amma sent Nomo and the spirits to earth in an ark. And so the earth was restored along the way. Nomo uttered the words of Amma, and the sacred words that create were made available to humans. In the meantime, Ogo was transformed by Amma into Yuguru, the pale fox, who will always be alone, always be incomplete, eternally in revolt, ever wandering the earth, seeking his female soul. And there's so much we can really get into with just the story of the Dogon, but have a whole DVD coming out on the Dogon in the near future. But wanted to put out there not just these 2 other stories, and Greek mythology as well as Egyptian mythology, all involving this cosmic egg, serpents, or what have you. It's all the same stuff, all going back to ancient Kemet. We can go to many different civilizations and find similar stories. And the crazy thing, of course, is we're not taught these stories. We're not told about this stuff. If you don't hear about it, if you don't find it online or what have you, we haven't been taught this. You got to think about all the years of schooling that was happening, before our time, where people wasn't being taught this information, yet it's out there. It's really important information, and it has more validity to it than anything biblical, because you have many different civilizations speaking of similar things versus, the Bible, where it's the only place you're going to find, Jesus and Moses and Aaron and all these people in that one book, that one spot. It's not different civilizations spread out through time and distance, giving you these same sort of stories. So we got to really look at that. Think about it's a reason why they want to keep this stuff from us, and a reason why it sounds all familiar and the same, because there's truth to it, even though the stories are esoteric and have hidden knowledge, hidden meanings to it. And you got to ask yourself, what would be the purpose of that? When seemingly so, we don't speak the language, but maybe the Egyptians gave it straight up, to its people. And what was taught in the mystery schools was taught, who knows how. But clearly, some people seem fit to put together these esoteric stories. And maybe it probably was esoteric stories in Kemet as well. But they seem fit to do it this way for a reason. And, some of us can figure it out, some can't. But there has to be a reason behind that. We're going to get into that. But this information is out there. And it's not being taught to us, and we have to find it and look for it. And when we find it, we find similar stuff, and it's a reason. So we got to look at this and really study it. So what people are not realizing is we are being constantly bombarded with Greek mythology, with Greek concepts and teachings everywhere. Not just the Bible, but Greek mythology. Almost every single epic movie or fantasy movie, almost all of them have some roots in Greek mythology, or it's flat out Greek mythology. It's a lot of movies and TV shows that have been put out over the years, over the decades, that is completely Greek. It is giving you Greek themes, or taking stories from Greek mythology and giving you these movies, teaching us and telling us about things that have esoteric meanings, esoteric backgrounds. It's a lot of them. They're out there. And of course, we see how Greek mythology plays within the school system. You graduate with the square of Kronos, or the square of Saturn on your head, the whole black robes of Saturn or what have you. You have college, where you have Greek fraternities. We are taught Greek mythology in school. You have these Greek fraternities that people go to, sororities, Greek week. So much stuff that's Greek that we find throughout our society that we are not really understanding how much Greek there is. So, talked about before with DC, Greek mythology. Marvel as well. Both Egyptian mythology and Greek mythology. This stuff is all the same. You got to really pay attention and know how to look for when it's giving you Greek mythology. And I talked about before how you have the original Marvel comics, the original Marvel universe, being based off Greek mythology. Stan Lee shows this himself, talked about this before, and you can see from the depictions, it comes from ancient Egyptian mythology, ancient Egyptian gods. So the original Marvel characters, you have ancient Egypt. Now, also, what a lot of people don't understand is before you had the Avengers, you had the Olympians. Greek mythology, Greek, the Olympians. So when we finally get the Avengers, who did the Avengers go up against? They fought Zeus. Greek mythology, they fought Zeus. Now, who did Zeus beat in Greek mythology? He beat the Titans. The Titans. And when you read Marvel Comics, anybody who reads Marvel Comics featuring Thanos, even if you've seen the new Avengers movie, they refer to Thanos as what? The Mad Titan. And when you look in the comic books, it tells you the same. It's called the Mad Titan. Now, understand, Thanos is called the Mad Titan, or the Titan. The simple fact that he's called a Titan should tell you something, because Thanos comes from the Greek Thanatos. Thanatos is the god of death. Anybody who reads those Marvel comics featuring Thanos, you know. Thanos is obsessed with death. Plain and simple. He's consumed by it. He's obsessed with it. Plain and simple. So, Thanatos is the god of death. Who else is the god of death? Kronos. Kronos is called the Grim Reaper, the god of death. Touch you, you die. Thanatos is also called the Grim Reaper, god of death. Now, the name Thanos is a male name, comes from the Greek male name Athanasos, which means immortal. Now, when you look on the Marvel's website, it talks about Thanatos. It says, skip down here, Thanatos materialized in the presence of the Avengers, led by the line of Olympus. The fact that they putting this stuff together tell you something. It's on Marvel's site. Marvel, Thanatos, led by the line of Olympus, Hercules, and his sister Athena, who were engaged in a heated battle with the Olympus group led by Hera. Now, in Greek mythology, Thanatos has a twin brother, Hypnos. Hypnos is the god of sleep, because they understood that sleep and death was the same. It's the same thing. And it's one of the things to try to get you to understand, which you're going to get more deeply into, is getting you to understand that fact, that death and sleep is the exact same thing. The problem is you don't have full control over death because you are stuck still with the material, your body. It's basically keeping you here in bondage from really experiencing the true reality. Not only that, you're basically in a state of, incoherence, where your subconscious has basically turned against you and is basically, split, trying to really get you to get things together, which the Gnostics call the gnosis, the knowledge, as I keep telling you guys, to get this stuff together in order for you to, have the right knowledge to conjure the power needed to escape, to really keep going and not get caught up in the cycle of reincarnation. But death and sleep is the same. If you remember Freddy Krueger, what did he do? In your dreams, if he killed you in your dreams, you died in real life. They was trying to give you the hint that sleep is death. What did Freddy want? Your soul. It's giving you all that information right there, getting you to put it together. It's the same stuff. So now when you really pay attention, you understand Thanos. This character from Marvel, that's not new. A lot of people have no clue. It's been around for a long time. This character from Marvel is Kronos. It's the same being. Whenever you get these characters, Zeus, Kronos. Zeus is also Jupiter. Kronos, Zeus, Santa Claus, Satan. All this stuff the same. And that's the thing. People get caught up in the story so much. It's the same. It's Kronos. So Thanos in the Marvel world, given to you in this movie, in this huge blockbuster that we have been seeing, everybody's talking about, making t-shirts and shit. It's Kronos. Plain and simple. Right there in your face. It's Kronos. Now, the 6 Infinity Stones basically represents the power that Kronos or Saturn has over the Earth or the planet. So you have the Soul Stone, the Mind Stone, Reality Stone, you have space stone, you have time, you have power. These stones, as I said, represents the power that Saturn has over us, over the earth. Plain and simple. As I said, people get caught up in the story and they don't really understand the history or the esoteric meaning behind what the story is trying to say. They're just caught up in the action and everything that's going on. So clear as day, the stones represent that, the power, Saturn. And, it basically gives it away that Thanos is Kronos, especially the part when he basically destroys the moon and he hurls it at Iron Man. It's one of the things they give it away right there. But also, if you remember, if you go back to comic books, go back to Thor. Anybody who was really into Thor, remember, Thor fought against the stones of Saturn. It was 6 stone men from Saturn that Thor fought against. And remember, all 6 of them had different powers. And, this is something that if you had the toys, anybody who was really into it, remember those beings. And the thing was, they were called Cronians. Now it says here, around 3000 BC, the Cronians attempted an invasion of Earth, landing in ancient Babylon. They fought King Gilgamesh of Uruk, who vanquished them with the aid of a time-traveling Captain America. The Cronians established a base on one of Saturn's moons, hence the name Stone Men of Saturn. In modern time, the Cronians landed an immense invasion force in Norway. Cited by Dr. Donald Blake, they pursued him into a cave where Blake discovered the hammer of Thor. The Cronians were on to attack NATO forces, driving them off with an illusion of a dragon. Think about this. Then Thor came to fight them. They lowered the cage over him to capture him, but he smashed through. They aimed their disintegrators at him, but he smashed them with his hammer. Finally, they unleashed the mechano monster, but Thor destroyed it with a single blow. Terrified of Thor, the Cronians fled Earth. So now, as I said, generational indoctrination. For centuries, they have been giving us the same story over and over again. Different forms, different ways. From rhapsodes to plays, musicals, poems, to Bibles, comic books, music, movies, TV shows, entertainment today. Plain and simple, it's been a progression of the same shit over and over again in different ways. The difference is generational acceptance. The way the generations was given, the information, the way they had to accept it has been different, but not so much different. No matter what year it is, a century, you tell somebody something, they learn it. Plain and simple. We just had different methods over time. And the thing with us, and the reason why it works so well against us, is the power of popularity, which is why I touched on that before, where something is so popular. It's the same thing back then as well. But, when you have stuff like mainstream media and TV and everything like that, it's easier for you to get to more of the masses of people versus back then, story to story, person to person. Things change, words change, a dragon becomes a dinosaur, so on and so forth. And you get to our time where the stories is really mixed up and there's a bunch of different versions, as you can see. But it's the same stuff over and over again. The thing is, why? The same story. Think about it. And it's something that you can't let slip away when you figure out the truth. You have to harp on the fact that it's Greek mythology, going back to ancient Kemet, kind of sort of switched around, plagiarized, but giving you that same core story that's going to eventually lead you to the fact that you have a soul, a spirit trapped in flesh when you get down to it, when you try to really take in the esoteric meaning of it all. And it's the same story over and over and over again that we keep getting. And it's from the Greeks. And now you can see what I was saying before in the beginning. You can see who's in power, because now when you look at it and you go all the way back from the Rhapsodes, from when they was teaching that way, what they was teaching, up until now, we can see everything we've been taking in. All the movies, the information are teaching itself, graduation, everything, Greek. Plain and simple. So you had, up until the Greeks conquered ancient Kemet, Zeus was God. Zeus was God of gods. And, once they started getting in that information, they started to change him. Zeus Amon. So I showed you guys when I went to the Cairo Museum. So now with Zeus Amon, interesting thing, it says here, Zeus, father of the gods and men, was one of the most important gods of Macedonia, as he was in most of Greece. He was in fact called by the title Panhellenos. Of all the Greeks, he is the only Greek god I have seen referred to like this. You see, sometimes gods shared titles. Both Zeus and Dionysus are called Soter, savior, and Athena was called Soteria, which is the feminine form. Amon, which means hidden in Egyptian, is by coincidence very similar to Amos, the Greek word for sand. So, among the first Greeks to encounter Amon, Zeus Amon was also a kind pun. It meant to them sandy Zeus, which is very appropriate for a god of a country that is primarily desert. Amon and Zeus were related very early on. Moreover, even most believe that Ammon is the name given to Zeus in the land of the Egyptians, a name which we, with a slight alteration, pronounce Ammon. Some writers said that not only are Zeus and Ammon the same deity, but is the same as the Jewish god who Celsus called Sabbath or Sabbath. And basically, every god called the highest god or the king of the gods in each pantheon, he explicitly states that it makes no difference which one you invoke. Roman author Minucius Felix comments on the various depictions of Zeus and or Jupiter. Everything you have been seeing, everything is saying there, is saying exactly what I have been talking about. That is the Greeks. They created the Jews. They are hiding behind the Jews. Plain and simple. It's the white man. Plain and simple. They named themselves exactly who they are. They are the power that is behind everything. A lot of people just simply can't fathom that. It's tough for them to grasp the fact that it's just the Greeks, because they just don't stand out. And that's how they work, how they play it, to pretend as if somebody else is running things when they are really the ones behind the whole thing. They created these Jews to hide behind who they are. Plain and simple, to hide the fact that they are the ones that is truly in power. You can call them Greeks, you can call them Romans, you can call them Germans, you can call them Russians or what have you. It's still white. It's still the same machine, the same beast running the system against us. And we got to wake up and see who the enemy really is and the tactics that is being used against us. That's the main thing that I want to get to you and get you to understand in this video. So you have to look at everything and understand, there is no Marvel or DC. It's all the same. It's the same. There is no, East versus West, Western Conference versus Eastern Conference, NFC versus AFC. There is no National League versus American League or what have you. It's all the same. We see these games and we root. I always talk about how I watch sports because I bet in sports, make a lot of money doing it. But again, I understand what it is, and it's a game. And again, you can see the emotion and passion and dedication that people put into their sport to, basically do what is basically going to keep the sport going. And the sport is what's really important. The championship is what? It costs that much as they playing the players. It's just the goal that you are supposed to work hard to achieve as a player, because that's your job. That's what you're getting paid to do. But all of it is to keep the sport going. Why? Because the sport is generating wealth for its owners. So it don't matter who wins. It don't matter what side. You have owners of each team, and they are going to make money regardless of who wins. Now, for sport, it would be nice if my team won. My team keeps winning, the more money I'll make, so on and so forth. But really, as long as the sport is going, it doesn't really matter. And it's the same thing with these world leaders. It's a game that they're playing, plain and simple. These people have shown you since, thousands of years ago that this is what they do. They're actors. This is what they do. So the rhapsodes, the actors in plays, we're talking about in ancient times. This is what these people did to spread false information, to spread information, period, up until now. It is in their nature to act, to do what's necessary in order to reach the agenda, plain and simple. So these leaders and rulers, plain and simple, they are playing the game to keep them where they are, plain and simple. So if you're president or prime minister or, monarch or what have you, as long as you play the game, you'll keep it within your bloodline, within your family, this wealth, this cycle of information, knowledge, being included in the group of the small few who is on top of the many. And that's what's taking place. Now, when we go back and trace it to the Greeks and seeing how they are the ones who are in power, the ones behind everything who we think is huge vis-a-vis the Jews and Roman power. So again, you look at it from the standpoint of the Romans conquering the Greeks, and the Greeks kind of sort of fading away, and you have this whole power with the Romans seemingly, and more so with the Jews when you start to pay attention of who the Jews are and what they're running. But it's all the same. It is the same thing. All the same global rulers basically controlling the situation, controlling what's going on. All that is for the efforts of keeping this information and knowledge suppressed away from us and keeping us in, the state that we are in. Now, Kronos just happened to be, their god, the one that represents what they're doing, the power that they have taken place, in this world. It's Kronos, time, Saturn, Satan, however you want to take it. You go back to the ancient world, it's Kronos, Zeus, Satan, and it's the same stuff when you pay attention, as I've been talking about. So you got to look at, the whole Saturnalian brotherhood, Saturnalia, where, of course, it talked about they had the festival of Christmas, where the original Christmas comes from, where they basically gave gag gifts or what have you, and they gambled or whatever like that. But that tradition, is carried on to what we know as Christmas as we know. But you have to look at it. As I was showing you guys, you have the corporations and companies with these Saturn logos. A lot of these companies, they are making money come Black Friday. Black Friday is to prepare for Christmas. You had Black Friday sales, all these corporations with these Saturn logos and all these other corporations that's involved. They are making huge amounts of money to prepare for their holiday that they've been celebrating, which is, Christmas or, Saturnalian holiday. And it's the same type of system that we have seen over, for hundreds of years that these people are engaged into. Us, it just seems like it's new, but it's really old by different names, by different circumstances. Today, because of information, because of the internet, what have you, as I said, we have more access to information. A lot of people are, more awake, but it's to a point where it don't matter. And it don't matter because after all this time that has passed, the people in power have put themselves in strategic positions to where they can't fail, which is why they are not worried about releasing or any types of information really leaking out, because it's over. And they know what they had to do. Just think about everything I talked about before. Rhapsodes and plays and everything they had to do to get the type of information to the masses of people, to get them to accept the teaching, indoctrinating the young, so on and so forth, waiting hundreds of years, waiting generations for their teaching that they taught the young to stick and be implemented, when they are adults. Who is going to have that type of discipline? What group? You put together a group, they're taking you out. If you're a Christian group and you're trying to spread the word, it don't matter. It benefits them. So you understand what I'm saying, how hard the battle would be for you to realize and understand what's going on and try to do something about it. You're not going to be able to indoctrinate a bunch of kids and survive generations to where that information is going to stick and be implemented into a way that's going to change the situation or the outcome of, the power that the powers that be have, what they're using, the way they're going with it, or what have you. Nothing you can do in your lifetime is going to combat that. And that's one of the things I really wanted to touch on in this video, because you have to really understand that for the people that really believe that we're just going to come together and it's going to work. We are fighting against, Bible tells you, the prince and power of the air, beings with powers in high places, Satan, whatever you want to call it. Powerful stuff that's going on. And you can't even get people to read a book. You can't even get people to listen to you 5 minutes to accept how serious the situation is to spark a change. It is an uphill battle. It's a tough fight. And the dedication that they've put in to get to where they are, we can't even begin to do so. So as I said, it's going to take individuals, slow process of waking up. If you have the desire to do so, as far as, waking up others, waking up your family, and so on and so forth. But even still, it's a heavy task. It's something that seems so impossible, and that there would have to be some sort of mass awakening, some type of moment that would have to happen for people to snap out of it. And what could that be? And once that moment comes, it might be too late to do anything about it. It might be over. That's when the hammer's going to fall, and it's going to be game. So what it all goes back to, as we're talking about in Greek mythology, Egyptian mythology, is understanding the trap, understanding the wheel, the cycle of reincarnation. I always keep trying to tell people that it's going to take you having the right knowledge, the right control of your energy. If you are not meditating, if you are not in a position where you are bringing knowledge to yourself and trying to wake up your consciousness to be in line with your subconscious, to unlock the masculine or feminine energy within yourself, to be who you truly are on a spiritual level, then, what's the point? You will just come back here until you can't come back here no more. And to say that is to really understand what is the drive of these beings. What do they ultimately want? Do they want to keep souls here forever, for all time? This goes into the whole Satan thing. Satan wants for it, at the end, him to have all the souls. What is the end? What is this leading to? And everybody is so blind and don't care, not really understanding what could possibly happen, that they could possibly be stuck here for all eternity, based upon, what's being taught and put out there. Imagine not being able to leave, to always reincarnate over and over and over again, to be stuck for all times at the power of these people. Now, again, some people don't care because they feel like there's so much good stuff in the material world. I don't mind coming back, but again, you won't come back with the knowledge of any of your past lives. You will restart over and over and over again. Who will want that? Especially when you understand that you have the power to create whatever you want, any scenario, situation, heaven, whatever you want, once you are truly you and truly able to get out of here and understand the power that you have, and that consciousness create matter. So anything you want to create, you can create, period. As I talked about before, the dream world, where you are sleeping. In the dream world, you are talking to people. You go to sleep, you might be talking to your cousin and brother, and it seems as if they're right there. Voices the same, look the same. a person you have never known. You go into a pizza store or something like that, a restaurant, and you're talking to a waitress in your dream. She's a totally different person, white, black, what have you, different voice, different personality. You don't know this person. She's in your mind. You created her. She's so real in your dream. Understand that. Think about that. These people, when you're downtown, when you're walking around in your dream, it's people everywhere. Personalities, doing things, sound different. These are your creation. You created them. You manifested them right there. What's to say when you understand that death, sleep is the same thing? Death, and the term that we describe, is nothing, but it's the next step. It's another form of existence that you could possibly have control over to do whatever you want to do and make physical or spiritual, what have you, because you have control now. So understand that concept. When people are talking about heaven, that's what they're talking about. To do what you want, to have the knowledge and the power to do so, and to create material and spiritual, whatever you want. This is an experience. Everything you take in within this experience, you're going to be able to use later. Your dreams are telling you this, because when you go to sleep and you're dreaming about stuff that you have experienced. You might be watching a movie while you sleep, or fell asleep watching a movie, and now you manifest that movie in your dream because you're hearing it. We do this all the time. It's power. You got to think about what's being said here, and don't discount the fact that throughout the civilizations, from ancient Greek time and Egyptian times, it's been the same stories passed down. It's some merit to it. It's some truth to it, especially when you study everything. You simply can't ignore what's being said or pass it off as a myth when many different civilizations are speaking of the same thing. The Bible has hidden stuff. Quran has hidden stuff. Torah hidden stuff. For you to go through and decipher and to match that stuff up with ancient Greek mythology, Egyptian mythology, and the teachings of all the ancients from many different civilizations and what they talked about. This is what I have done. And when you do that, you'll see everything lines up. It just does. And what I teach you, what I talk about in these videos, is giving you that information so you can understand when I'm saying get this knowledge in you. It's serious. It's serious. It's real. Because now, what you're going to begin to do as you meditate and becoming more conscious, this information is in you. You're going to begin to, manifest that within the dream, within meditation, and have, real life experiences that's going to, give you beneficial moments because of that information. Make you go in right directions, help you train yourself, your consciousness to walk in the right direction, to, accept the right knowledge, to go the right way, make the right decisions in life. That's going to all lead you to where you want to be at, in this existence. So all the movies we've been seeing, Greek mythology, all the themes, remember Hercules, and seeing, all these TV shows and movies giving us this information, these secrets, and the different generations taking in this information and understanding what's being said esoterically, and us just watching it, get entertainment from them. Until now, here's our chance. And you got to think about the people in those generations. Did they get it? Did they understand the knowledge before they pass? The information was right there in their face. And here it comes our turn. The information is here. And we're seeing it. And now, even more so than, the past generations, we have more access to information and knowledge. Even more so, we should understand what this stuff is saying and how important it is. Even more so, we should know to take it in and study it and to really look at it and be critical, but at the same time, don't pass nothing off as, being crazy or spooky. To accept all this information, there's no way in the world all of this information from different civilizations could just be a coincidence or some type of fairy tale. There's no way in the world. And we got to look at it. And I've dealt with the whole, thought that it can be, a lie told over and over again. And it's things that you got to look at from civilization and time as far as what's being said, that this one generation during this one period of time was talking about the same thing that, a generation was talking about over 1,000 years ago, and how information was spread, during that time, and the fact that they wouldn't have no reason to do this. For what? This society, we understand how it works. It's games, movies, acting for a reason, money or what have you. They wasn't doing that stuff back then. They was more serious about this information. It was in everything. So we got to look at it and take it seriously. Saturn is everything they told us to stay away from. Satan, astrology, understanding what the esoteric knowledge of Satan in the Bible is, leading back to all these Greek mythology and gods, Satan, Kronos, or what have you. All the stuff that we stayed away from that was spooky. And when you start really getting into this esoteric knowledge on a, satanic, Luciferian level, you're going to find the same stuff. Plain and simple. And this is what they don't tell you, because how much of a story is it? You got to think about that, okay? Satanism, it's not that much in the Bible about Satan. So where are you getting this information from? What are they talking about? What else is there that you don't know? You look in the Bible, it's not much on Satan. So where is this stuff coming from if the only place you're getting information about Satan from is in that book? So who is this other person? Who are these other beings? What are they talking about? Not much in there about him. So you got to understand from that point, and this is what led me to start really digging into it, was that thought right there. All this information I'm hearing, they got a whole religion on it. What the fuck else is it? I read the Bible. It's not much in there. I'm thinking it's this whole big, long, super long chapter on just Satan and everything. It's not in the Bible. It's not much information. So when you start to study, you see what it really is and what they're really talking about, and how they get into all this esoteric knowledge. Greek mythology is the key. Ancient Egyptian culture, mythology is the key. Studying it, understanding what they taught and what they talked about and where it leads to, who's using this information is the key. So again, this is how we see clearly. Again, it's the Greeks. Keep saying it. This is how we see clearly it's them. When you have that ancient information still existing today, different forms being passed down all throughout our entertainment system. And that we have these Jews running entertainment, movies or what have you. And the fact that we have these movies with Greek mythology and Jews run the entertainment industry. Where are all the Jewish movies? Where are all these movies at? Where are all the movies about their history? Here you have a chance to really go and dig in to all the ancient stuff that's been happening, all the stuff they went through, their ancient history, that when we go back, we see with the Greeks, there's a whole bunch of it. We see with the ancient Egyptians, there's a whole bunch of it. With Sumer, China, all these other civilizations got these long, vast histories and mythologies and stories. But here you have the Jews giving us movies about the Greeks. More Greek mythology movies than it is biblical movies. Think about that. Here they have a shot running Hollywood to really give us their history, to tell their side of the story. And the Jewish movies we get is to just basically validate who they are, because that's what they've been trying to do since the beginning, to try to fit in, to push themselves in there when they have a chance to really tell their story. And they can't do it, and they won't do it, because when people trace it back, guess what? It's not going to be there. And they know it, so they leave it alone. Tell you Greek mythology, because that's them. That's their real history. And that's what we get. All the movies I showed you, I didn't even show all of them. All the TV shows. They hide in their history. And you got to feel some type of way if you're a people and you're proud of your history and you want to talk about it, but you can't really talk about it the way you want to because you're not supposed to. So you would think on those lines, you would see more Jewish movies. But we get the Greek movies because they're Greeks. They run Hollywood. They run in the music industry. They still giving us the whole rhapsodes. They're giving us the plays. They're giving us everything they was doing in ancient Greece on a different level and using it in the exact same way to convince the people, to convince us to go in the direction that's going to really, help their agenda, come to fruition. And we are doing that. It's tough to see, so many people seemingly conscious fall for the same stuff. And there's a lot of you guys out there doing research, and I make these type of videos to get you guys to push you to that next, to fill those gaps, push you to that next level to keep it going. So many emails from you guys, so many thank you emails, and everything I get from people talking about, these DVDs and how much it helps them fill gaps, and how it's not many people talking about this stuff, but it really helps you fill gaps and save you some time from really having to dig through a lot of stuff. So I want to thank you guys for taking the time to watch and purchase and support. I appreciate it. Did not want to get too deep in this information because we got a lot more to go into. And once we start getting into this information deeper, it leads to a lot of different things. So I want to be careful on how I put this information out so it's accepted and received with understanding and not confusion. So it's a lot more to go. And a lot more videos on Greek mythology, and you see how I've been doing it with Greek mythology and the ancient history, and how it's kind of sort of going hand in hand. And when you pay attention to the Bible series, all this stuff is lining up together when you watch it. All the information basically is leading, coming from the same spot. It lines up, and it helps validate things. I think a lot more people today are more willing to accept the information and learn, and more open, to studying and learning about, history, especially our history and what has been taking place on this planet. So it's good. It's the perfect time to put out information, to really be learning and studying, because so much stuff coming up. It's a lot of situations where knowledge comes into play. And if you got it, you win, you're on top, you're doing good. But I want to thank you guys for, taking the time to watch, purchasing, supporting. Thanks to everybody who participated in the flash drives and bought them and supported. And, it's a lot more to come, a lot more videos. Thanks to everybody who's been supporting the clothes and everything. Thank you guys for, really, really making the series big and making the series really spread. This series, this is only part 2, but the Bible series really well. Especially Mystery School, probably the top one. Saturn and Satan, of course, which is done, and possibly more from that I have to touch on, but we'll see. It might be in different type of videos. But this Greek mythology one, this is the one. When we start really getting more deeper into it, that it's gonna, if it's not tying in yet, it will tie in even more so as we go through Greek mythology. It makes sense in a lot of ways, for the simple fact that, they are basically giving us the same information, in different forms over time. So it makes it easier to go back and put the stuff together, as I did in this video, to get you to see where this stuff is coming from. So just a small taste of what's to come and how much this information is everywhere. And we're going to get into it. So again, thank you guys for watching and purchasing and supporting. See you next video.